Today, we're going to be unlocking some knowledge that, well, was probably meant to stay hidden. We're diving into a framework for unearthing lost and forbidden ideas, a really cool concept called the Shadow Cabinet.
So let me start by asking you this. What if the most powerful, most game-changing ideas are the ones we've never even heard of? The ones that have been lost, or hidden, or just plain buried? It's a pretty wild thought, right? And it's the entire reason we're here today.
I want you to think of this as a kind of intellectual adventure. It's the philosophy course you were never offered in school. We're deliberately stepping off that well-worn path of Plato and Aristotle. Instead, we're headed for the fringes, exploring ideas that exist just outside of conventional intellectual history.
So, what is it we're actually looking for on this journey? To really get the Shadow Cabinet, we first have to understand its core mission. And that means we need a solid definition for what makes a philosophy forbidden in the first place.
So what does forbidden really mean here? It's not about ideas being inherently evil or anything like that. It's about concepts that were pushed to the margins. Whether they were just kind of lost in the shadows, actively rejected by the mainstream, or straight up suppressed, they were silenced. This definition is basically our map for this whole exploration.
But, forbidden is a pretty big word. To help make sense of it all, this series organizes these ideas into 4 distinct shadow categories. It's this brilliant framework that shows us all the different ways an idea can get lost to history. Let's break them down.
First up, we have the dark and obscure. These are ideas that aren't necessarily controversial, they're just unknown. Imagine some revolutionary theory tucked away in an old academic journal that nobody ever read. They're basically brilliant ideas that are hiding in plain sight. Then you've got forgotten or incomplete. History is absolutely littered with these, amazing sparks of genius that never quite got to become a full-blown flame. Think of some of those pre-Socratic thinkers. We only have fragments of their work, little tantalizing hints, because the rest was lost. It's like finding a few pages from an incredible book that's been burned.
Okay, now this is where things get a little more spicy. Type 3 is intentionally suppressed. These are the ideas that powerful institutions, political, religious, you name it, actively worked to bury. A classic example is the Gnostics. Their belief in finding divine knowledge on your own was seen as a huge threat, so it was branded a heresy and systematically stamped out. These ideas weren't just ignored, they were hunted. And finally, we have controversial and rejected. These are the radical ideas, the so-called heresies that directly challenge the status quo. Think of nihilist philosophies that question the very basis of morality. They were considered so dangerous that they had to be fought tooth and nail. And let's be honest, being told an idea is too dangerous to even consider? Well, that just makes you want to know more, doesn't it?
So, that's the system for finding these forbidden ideas. But the Shadow Cabinet does way more than just collect them like stamps. It uses this really unique 2-step method to analyze them, which gives us both an understanding of the idea and the story behind it.
Here's how it works. It's a dual-pronged approach. First, you get the exposition, a straightforward breakdown of what the idea is all about. But then comes the really crucial second step, the historical investigation. Why was this idea suppressed? Who was afraid of it? And what did they have to lose if it caught on?
This slide just nails why you absolutely need both steps. An idea without its history is just a weird, floating curiosity. It's interesting, but it has no anchor. On the flip side, the story of why it was suppressed doesn't mean much if you don't even know what the idea was. You need both to unlock the whole story.
And here's the real takeaway. By combining the what with the why, this method does something amazing. It doesn't just teach you about philosophy, it pulls back the curtain on history itself. It shows you the power struggles and the deep-seated fears that decide which ideas get to survive and which ones get buried.
So you might be thinking, these are some pretty obscure and complex topics. How do you make them feel exciting?
Well, the series uses this really clever narrative strategy it calls the uncanny hook.
It's all about tapping into that natural human desire to know secrets. The way things are framed makes you feel like you're not just learning a new fact, you're uncovering a piece of forbidden knowledge. You're being let in on a secret that history tried to keep, and honestly, that feeling is just incredibly compelling.
And you can totally see this hook in action with titles like these: The Gnostic Heresy, The Fatalism of the Pre-Socratics, The Lost Ethics of the Nihilist Cults. Words like heresy, fatalism, and lost immediately signal that there's a mystery here. They don't just state a topic, they promise you're about to learn something you weren't supposed to know.
So when you put it all together, the sharp definition, the organized categories, the deep dive method, and that compelling hook, what you get is way more than a history lesson.
The Shadow Cabinet is really an invitation. It's like a toolkit for anyone with a curious mind to start digging into the shadows of our intellectual past.
And that's a pretty empowering thought, isn't it? That all these forgotten and suppressed ideas are still out there, just waiting to be rediscovered. So, we'll leave you with this. We've basically just given you the key to a hidden library of knowledge. The only question is, which door will you unlock first?